the technology issues. So we're ready to go. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay,
yes,
just have a perfect. Thank you. Okay, I just have a few announcements. We've got our guest facilitator, Jessica Bronzert, here today, and I'll let her introduce herself. I sent out her bio this week. As you can tell, she's got extensive experience in the realm of coaching and vertical coaching, and is a lecturer right now at Georgetown, which I have also heard there are several people, well, not several, maybe a small grouping of Georgetown graduates here with us today. So congratulations to all of you. There we go. Just quick announcements. Of course, this meeting is being recorded. I will offer CCEs for those who are ICF accredited. I'll send out that link after this. Also, wanted to let everybody know that the Kirkpatrick Partners ROI on DoD coaching, the recording is up and running. It's about 15 minutes, but it's worth every second. So I encourage you all to go ahead and access that link and watch the video. It's also on our DoD coaching website, so you can access the video there as well as the actual written report, which is only about 6 pages, but it's also very succinct and well worth the read. Also on our DoD coaching website, we do have updates to our DoD coaching campaign week. We've got lots of photos, so if you participated, your photo is probably there. You might want to go check that out. Moodle, which is down right now. We do have new DoD coach bio templates, as well as the coaching agreement information form for the client, and a link to the end of coaching feedback. So if you're coaching under DoD coaching, we ask that you use all of those when you are assigned a client. Also, just wanted to let you know that the Naval Academy has approached us about an AI coach platform, if you will. And so we do have a few volunteers who are going to be part of that focus groups. And so we'll just kind of keep you updated on that and how that pans out, and possibly ask for more volunteers in the future. And then the last thing I wanted to do is very briefly go over the proposed big rocks for FY25 and DoD coaching. Again, I sent this out to you, these slides, so you can read the details on your own, but you can see we've got about 12 big rocks. We're looking at train the trainer programs for our accredited coach training program, marketing volunteers, volunteers to help with a group coaching pilot, volunteers to help us create a tracker that is similar to the ICF Reciprocoach, so you can track the number of sessions that you've had with your clients and so on and so forth. We also need volunteers for the DoD Coaching Campaign Week in 2026. We need volunteers to help us create a Coaching Skills for Leaders workshop, as well as volunteers for short videos for our DoD Coach Training Program. Right now we're using ICF videos as well as YouTube videos, but we'd like to make them more DoD-centric. We also have already a volunteer to help us with the therapy versus coaching video, but more people, if you'd like to help as well, please let us know. Also need volunteers to look into the possibility of a special experience identifier for coaches. That word is, I know, Air Force specific, but basically in your record, your HR record, if we are able to create an identificator, we can identify you as a coach and at what level you are, have it be nuanced in terms of your type of certification. Also, we would like a team to kind of get together and look to see what it would look like to create an occupational series for coaching. I kind of already think it should fall under the 0101 category, but this is something that we would have to work out with OPM. Also, in the future, we're looking at a level 2 ICF accredited coach training program, so we'd love volunteers for that. And then we have several people who have retired now, coaches who have retired from the DoD or are planning to, and would really like to continue being a part of DoD coaching. So we're looking to see if we can get a hiring authority to hire ex-federal employees on a volunteering basis. And so if you're interested, please, by all means, I'll take a copy of this and I'll put it in the link. But if you're interested, please sign up. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Jessica, I'd like to introduce Jessica to everybody, and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Can everyone see my slides that I just put up? Yes. Okay. Let me put it in full presentation mode here and get you guys back on the screen so I can see you. Hi, it is wonderful to be here. My name is Jessica Bronzert. I own the Sparks Group. We are an executive coaching and leadership development firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. You may have heard that I am a graduate of the Georgetown coaching program, and I want to thank Joe Essex, who recently graduated from Georgetown and connected me with Melissa for this opportunity. So thanks, Joe. I'm really delighted to be here with you. I have been practicing as a coach for about 11 years now. I went to Georgetown in 2014. I had a career in corporate human resources prior to that. Got the coaching bug, fell in love with it, like I'm sure many of you did, if not all of you, and have been working in my own business ever since. And I have a really deep interest in vertical development that I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm really excited to share this topic. It's my favorite topic to talk about. Um, and so we'll get into it. A couple of things I will say. If you're willing to put on your camera, I think that would be lovely. It is just so much more pleasant for me to speak to human faces rather than blank boxes. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Melissa. It just makes it feel better, more interactive. So if you're willing to do that, I appreciate it. And I understand if you're not in a spot where you can. The other thing I want to say, just by way of starting, is that I have a story, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure other people have different stories, but I have a story that it's a really difficult time or a challenging time to be a federal employee, a civil servant. It's just a tough time. There's a lot going on in the world that's contributing to that. And so I think the work that you are doing collectively as coaches inside the military and inside the government is just more important than ever. That there are a lot of people who need what you have to offer, in addition to navigating your own situations, right? So I just want to say that up front. Whether or not that's true for you, whether or not you agree with me, that's my story, and it's part of why I'm glad to be here. And so I really hope that this is in service to you as an individual. I hope it's in service to your practice. I hope it's in service to the clients that you're serving inside the DoD. And I really just want to offer a sense of gratitude and appreciation for your contributions to making the world a better place and keeping us safe. So with that, let's dive in. So we're going to talk about vertical development today. And here is the bottom line. You already know what this is. You may not have heard the term before. You may have no idea what we're going to talk about today, but I am here to tell you that you actually already know what this is because you have lived it, you've seen it, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So, as a way of getting into this, the first thing I want to do is open up, invite you to join the conversation a little bit. And with this starter question, what is maturity? We're going to use this kind of term maturity as a proxy for vertical development today. So I want to invite you to come off mute and or put in the chat what you think of when you hear the word maturity.
This is Marissa from Crane Army. I would say responsibility and accountability.
Nice. Maturity is having responsibility and taking accountability. I like it. What else? Not a trick question, I promise.
We've got some responses in the chat here. We've
Yeah,
got
great.
wisdom, growing from one level to another, being responsible, growing in perspective, knowing there's so much you don't know.
Yes.
Having a growth mindset versus closed, saying what you mean and doing what you say. Let's see, it keeps shifting on me here.
Yeah.
Having a deeper knowing. Thank you, Paul,
Yes.
for that.
Ah.
Yeah. Growth,
Those are
expansion, development, wisdom, and growing every day. And more, but I'll let you go on.
that's the gist. But that's terrific. So we're clearly talking to a group of coaches because those are all really wonderful contributions to the definition of maturity. And I agree with all of them. And so the second question that I'm going to pose to you theoretically, but I'll answer for you, is if you're presented with two people, let's say, who are standing next to each other and you have the chance to talk to both of them for 10 or 15 minutes, do you think that you can ascertain or discern who might be more mature and who might be less mature? And most people, we won't stop and discuss this one, but most people, the answer is yes, right? So we inherently have a sense of what maturity is. We have an ability to discern maturity. And that is essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about vertical development. We are talking about that growth in our worldview. We're talking about that ability to take perspective. And this is my point, that you already know what this is. You already have an intuitive sense of what maturity is, and maturity is essentially what vertical development is. So I like to do that as a way to get into this because chances are you know a lot more about this topic than maybe you think that you do. So with that, we're going to move on and start to build the business case for why vertical development is important. So raise your hand. It's a little bit hard for me to see all of you with the way this is done in Teams, but put your hand up if you are familiar with this term VUCA. It's actually originated as a military term. So I'm guessing that a lot of you are probably familiar with it. Yeah, there we go. A lot of hands are going up. So you know that this is a military term that the business world has unabashedly stolen for the last several decades. That really was adopted by the military to describe the state of warfare as we were coming into the modern era. And the business world said, yeah, us too. Basically, that the world of organizational life, the world at large, is increasingly becoming more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous. And so many of us are tuned in to seeing these things around us now, and how this impacts leaders, right? That the increasingly VUCA environment that we're dealing with makes leadership even more of a challenge. To build on that, you may not yet be familiar with a new acronym called BONNI. So this term comes from, I'm going to forget his name, but he's a researcher at the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto. And coming out of the pandemic, I think this acronym was coined in 2020 or 2021 to kind of describe the pandemic, post-pandemic environment that we, as a little bit more individual, but still some system stuff in here, that increasingly we're becoming more brittle, more anxious, that the world is becoming increasingly non-linear. Certainly, we're totally not 100% clear how the pandemic even started yet is a great example of that, and that things are increasingly incomprehensible. So what we have is a world that is increasingly VUCA, a world that is increasingly BONNI, that is kind of setting the stage for leaders. Essentially, the idea being like, it's tough out there. It's tough out there to be a leader because of all of these things that we're describing with VUCA and BONNI. And so I want to open it up for a little bit of chat here and invite you to reflect on where you are seeing VUCA and where you are seeing BONNI in the Department of Defense. What are you seeing in the parts of the organization where you work that are aligned with these ideas? Feel free to come off mute and weigh in. Have a little bit of discussion here, or maybe Melissa, you can help moderate the chat a little bit. Where are VUCA and BONNI showing up right now for all of you?
So a lot of people said with the DRP, the deferred resignation program, technology disruption, AI usage, HQ organizational something, it keeps moving on me here, restructure, reorg, budget, workforce and personnel management and development, executive orders and their long-running unresolved effects.
Yep.
Our newer airmen, but also with the ever-changing policies and executive orders. Let's see, being fired or forced to resign for for bringing bad news. Skill gaps, reorg and leadership challenges, resources, rapidly changing personnel rules, processes, etc. Impacts and staff shortages outside of the DoD, and again, reorganization efforts.
Yeah, that's a really short list. It doesn't sound like there's much going on. I don't know what the problem is. So this is the case. This is the case in almost every organization where I ask this question, is that the list is really long, and if we really gave it some serious effort, it would get a lot longer, right? There is a lot of disruption, a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty in every organization. And you all clearly are no different, right? That's a pretty comprehensive list of things. So, we're all living with this is kind of the point, here. And that creates what we call the complexity crisis. So this is some really interesting research from an organization called Lectica. And what they measure, this is a study that they've done that has been duplicated in the nonprofit sector, the for-profit sector, and the government sector, researching the task demands that are on people at various levels of leadership, and what our collective ability at those leadership levels is to meet those task demands. So what you can see here is that along the bottom we have supervisors all the way up to senior leaders in the sort of green bars, and then we have a dark green line going up. And hopefully what you notice is that the gap between the green line and the green bars as we move up in leadership levels gets larger. And what that means is that the gap between what people at those levels of leadership are expected to do and what we collectively can bring to the table at those levels, the gap is getting larger and larger as we grow in leadership. And so that creates a leadership development imperative. This is why we need to develop more leadership capacity, because the world is changing much faster, the world is getting more complex, and the research is showing that collectively we are not able to keep up as well as we might otherwise. And so the antidote that I want to offer you today for that is vertical development. So what is vertical development? I've already offered you one kind of analogy or proxy in the word maturity, but I want to give you a little bit more here, that vertical development is really the ability to think in increasingly interdependent ways. And it's about our worldview. You can think of the words mindset or worldview or outlook as kind of ways to think about vertical development. It is about how we make sense of what we see happening around us, right? So I started at the beginning with, I have a story about what it's like to be a federal employee right now. That's an example of my worldview at play. That's how I'm making sense of things, okay? And so what we know about vertical development, and I want to give this to you in a different way, is a different analogy to help you understand it, is to contrast it with horizontal development. So we're going to use a smartphone. I like to hold my phone while I'm doing this little part here. So if I have a smartphone, I can make that phone do all kinds of things, right? I like to play words with friends. I can do my banking. I can check email. I can make phone calls. I can use it as a flashlight. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that I can do with my phone, right? And so if we translate that to humans, we can add skills and competencies to our human containers, right? I can learn to use Excel. I could learn a lot about how the Department of Defense works, right? I don't know a lot about the DoD. So there's a boatload of knowledge, for example, that I could absorb and take on about the organization. And so that's all horizontal development. When we're adding knowledge, we're adding skills, we're adding competencies to the human toolkit, to the human container, we call that horizontal development. It is incredibly important, right? Especially when we're starting out in our careers and we're hired to do a specific job. We've got to learn how to do the job, right? We've got to know how to do the thing that we're being paid to do. And as we grow, if you just keep adding apps to the phone, what is going to happen eventually? The phone is going to slow down. The phone might stop working because why? The operating system needs to be upgraded. So when we talk about vertical development, what we're really talking about is upgrading the human operating system, upgrading that worldview, upgrading that outlook. And so my invitation to you today is that both of these things are important, but horizontal development has really dominated the landscape in the leadership development industry for a long time now. I think the term competency was coined in the 1950s. Many of us really rely on and still use competency models to think about growing people and growing ourselves. And that is wonderful and that is important. What has been neglected or not incorporated to the degree that I think it could, and the industry kind of agrees on this, is this more vertical piece. How do we help people grow their capacity? How do we help people grow their ability to take a broader perspective, to think in more interdependent and sophisticated ways? That's really what vertical development is about. So how does it work? So we've got a picture of a tree here, sliced open or cut open so that we can see the rings. This is a really nice analogy for how vertical development works. The first thing is that we have to begin at the beginning. All of us grow through the stages of vertical development, starting with the first stage and moving on to later stages. There is no ability really to skip over a stage of development to go to a later stage without going through the stages that came before that. Okay. Most of us have what we call a center of gravity. We have a stage or stages where we are most comfortable operating that is most aligned with our worldview most of the time. We might regress or go back to an earlier stage occasionally. We might have moments where we can reach forward to a later stage, but most of us are going to operate with a center of gravity, a place in this model where we're most comfortable most of the time. There is also a debate about whether or not we call them stages or states. So I've just kind of described a stage way of looking at it. The state way of looking at it argues that we might float among these different ways of making sense of things multiple times throughout the day. So if I'm talking to my college student that you might have heard Joe and I talking about at the beginning, I might be coming from one worldview or one stage of development. But if I'm here on this call, I might be coming from a different stage of development. If I'm with a client later today, yet I might be in yet a different place. So there's this idea of stages a little bit more sticky, a little bit more permanent versus states that are a little bit more temporary with a little bit more dynamism. You can decide which of those feels more compelling to you. After we talk about all of this, does a state approach feel a little bit more relevant to you or a stage approach feel more relevant to you? Somebody have a question? Nope. Okay. And then the last thing here is that people who have developed to later stages are able to understand the earlier stages because they've grown through them. They know what's in there. After we grow through a stage, it is still a part of us, even if that's not where we live a lot of the time. So it's easy to understand the stages that you've already grown through, but it is not as easy. You can intellectually understand stages that are beyond your own developmental place, but it's hard to embody it. It's hard to really know what that feels like or looks like on sort of a felt sense level. Okay. Any comments or questions at this moment? I want to pause. Okay. Leanne has a question.
Jessica, this is so amazing. I just can't, I love the synergy of it. And it's just like such an aha thing, especially with a lot of the changes and new employees and not really understanding a lot of the things that have happened or are happening. So this is just so amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad I won you over and we're like barely getting started. That's terrific. What I think I would like to do now is, let me see where we are. So here's the model. We'll touch briefly here, but I actually want to put you into breakout rooms for just a few minutes with two other people. Melissa's going to tee this up for us. I'm going to go back actually to this slide right here to horizontal and vertical. What I'd like you to do in your breakout room, this is so you can have some dialogue with each other and really try this on for yourself. I would like you to have a very brief discussion with your breakout room partners about when you have experienced horizontal development and when you have experienced vertical development. So you did not get to be an adult working in the Department of Defense without experiencing both of these things. So let's talk about a couple of examples to get you set up. I mentioned a couple of ways that horizontal development can happen. This is about learning a new skill, learning a new competency. So maybe you recently, maybe you recently learned how to be a coach. Maybe like Joe, you recently went and got certified as a coach. That would be an example of primarily horizontal development, right? I'm learning how to do a new skill. Okay. Vertical development is going to be when your mindset has changed about something, when your worldview has shifted. So, a couple of examples of things that might shift your worldview. Who can think of any? What are life events or work events or things that happen in the world that impact our outlook, how we make sense of things? Can anyone take a stab at what some of these experiences might be? Again, knowing that everybody has had at least some of these along the way.
Loss.
Yes, loss. Loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of a home, loss of any kind. Yes, absolutely.
Having a kid?
100%. Often it is the things that we want that cause us to grow the most. I don't know anybody who really understood what it was going to be like to be a parent until the child actually arrived, right? That is absolutely, absolutely mind blowing. What else?
Becoming a supervisor in the federal government.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and I would argue that translates context, right? So anytime you become a people leader, I think that is a really big mindset shift. Let's get one or
We
two
also-
more.
Jessica, just in the chat, we've got traumatic experiences, a lot about having children, going to war, which is very DoD centric specific. So just wanted to add that there. And then I think Sarah has her hand.
Yeah, Sarah, what do you want to add?
Yes, it's funny because I was thinking the same, but it's not just having kids. I never imagined having three children and being able to, do my job well and keep getting more responsibility at work. That in my mind was like a no, I could not do it. So that's one of those shifts that I've experienced.
Yeah, so we don't have time to dig into it here, but my guess is the way you think about yourself has really changed as a result of those experiences. Would that be fair to say, Sarah?
Yeah, it's the capacity. Like back to you, you nailed it. It is the capacity. I can handle more.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. All right. So I think you've got a basic idea of what we're looking for here. I just want you to reflect on your own life, share with your partners. We'll give you about 10 minutes here. Share with your partners in your room what your vertical and horizontal experiences have been, and then we'll come back and we'll keep moving.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms. There will be more than 3 people in there, just because of the number of people that we have, but here we go.
Okay, thanks, Melissa.
Mhm. Oh no, I assigned everyone.
Hi, Melissa. I dropped. Did they already go to breakout rooms?
We did. Let me go ahead and try to get you back in there. Oh, Lisa, you should be in room 12 here.
Okay.
Let's see. Do you have something that says click on button to?
It does not. Let me see. No, I don't have anything.
Okay, let me do something here. Okay. Unassigned. Okay, let me see here. Okay, hopefully that'll work.
Yeah, it says it's going to move.
Okay, perfect.
Hello, this is Anya. Can you hear me?
Yes. Are you
Oh,
having
hi.
issues?
I joined late, and I'm sorry. I did click on join room when I came in, but then I said hello and nobody responded. It looked like there were two
Oh,
people in there, but
do
they
you know
didn't.
what room you were in?
I think it was 6. I think it had
Okay.
John Hope in it, I believe. So I don't know if they
Okay.
couldn't hear me.
Okay, let me see what I can do here.
Yeah, it
I
still
joined
hasn't
late,
moved
so I
me.
could just wait until till everybody comes back. If that's
Okay,
easier.
I just found it. Well, if you and Lisa want to just chat, that would work.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And I apologize, I had another work client, so I joined late. So I didn't know what the group topic was to discuss.
Okay.
Go ahead,
And
Melissa.
Andrew, well, I was just going to say Andrea just joined as well. So Lisa, I'll let you go ahead and explain, and the three of you can be partners for the next 5 minutes here.
Awesome.
Vertical, horizontal is what you know, and vertical was what something that changed your mind. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yeah. So horizontal development is like becoming a SME in a specific area or learning a new skill, whereas vertical development has a lot to do with maturity and how you view the world. And so you gain different perspectives as you have different life-changing events.
Thank
If that
you.
helps.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So I will actually start. So something that I know that I do well. So I came in from a technical background into a leadership workforce development background or job that went into the whole leadership development and all that. And so that was something that I actually had to learn, but am now teaching classes on it and everything. So I think that would fit the horizontal. And then for the vertical, when the pandemic hit, I was all about you got to be in the office. I was one of those type of people. And when the pandemic hit, it was like, well, actually, I get more work done at home. So my mindset really changed on that. Over.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lisa. I don't want to be the moderator, so
Okay.
anybody else can go. Yeah, everybody can go.
So
Sorry.
I'll go. This is Anya. So I get just examples, right, of kind of what we have for horizontal and vertical, right? That's what it sounded like based on your input in the examples. So with, let's see, horizontal, becoming a SME, learning a new skill. I'm starting well, I'm not going to be a SME right away, but next week I'm going to be starting a photography class. So that'll be a new skill for me because I want to try to actually learn like all the bud-nology and settings on my camera. And so that'll be exciting, but a little nerve-wracking too. Hopefully I'm giving appropriate examples. If not, please let me know, Melissa. And then vertical maturity, how you read the world. I would definitely say that I think that, and I hope that how I view the world is shifted as I've gotten older and lived in different places, been exposed to different cultures. I think just kind of like transition in age, you know, kind of how people treat you at different stages of your life, kind of, and how you kind of look back at different stages of your own experiences of kind of what your mindset was. And so I hope I've become more mature along the way, and that my worldview has expanded and will continue to expand. And hopefully I address those correctly for the exercise.
Well, I definitely have to agree with you about as you age, your thought processes definitely do change. You know, with the times, I guess is what I would think, you know, because I was raised one way and growing older, it's like, well, maybe I need to make some changes kind of thing. So I definitely agree with that, getting older.
Yeah, I think you're both spot on. And just, I know I said I wasn't going to moderate or give any input, but one thing that kind of struck me is when Jessica said, you know, going through coach training, you're gaining a new skill, which would be your horizontal development. But at the same time, I almost think that, you know, with the embodying a coaching mindset, for me, that was vertical growth for me. And so I guess you could maybe gain horizontal, you know, kind of SME skill type lessons or skills, if you will, and grow vertically as well at the same time.
I totally agree with that, Melissa. I think that in terms of like specific to coaching, one reason I love the training sessions is the learning a new skill. So I love I kind of call it just like the continuing education. It's not, I feel like coaches don't look at typically, I feel like coaches don't look at, you know, kind of like one class and you're done. It's like a lifelong learning endeavor. So that to me is really exciting, and it's exciting to be around other people that are seeking that too. But I totally agree with you too in terms of like the vertical with coaching, because to me, I feel like working with clients from different backgrounds, and I mean, I'm still a newer coach, but the clients I have worked with, different backgrounds and different challenges, I think that that kind of helps to hopefully make me more empathetic to, you know, different issues people may be going through, and just remind me that in my own life that every single person is like struggling with something. You might not see it, but that we're all struggling with something to varying degrees, and to be understanding of that. So I appreciate you saying that, Melissa.
Yeah, no problem. We're bringing groups back here.
Sorry.
In the middle of such a good conversation.
Welcome back. I'm going to throw the slides back up here again.
Thank you.
And Jessica, I did not mean for you to be part of the breakout, but I'm sure you had fun.
We had fun. We did well. That is okay. Let's hear from a couple people. Anything interesting that came out of that little breakout that anybody wants to share? Anyone have some really interesting or unique horizontal or vertical experiences? Life is hard. Yes, Darla. Yes, it is. Was it a good dialogue or did we not like that?
Oh no. Go ahead. Yeah, Paula, please speak. Please call on
Yeah.
her. She was
Oh,
in our group.
Paula. Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So in our group, we talked a lot about what kind of came out of it is that we thought more about horizontal, tying into this stages and states concept that you were talking about, that horizontal growth felt like something much more concrete that you can kind of put your hands on.
Yeah.
Whereas vertical is an evolution, it's a growth, it's a becoming, and it is not a, it's like the growth of a plant almost, like it's imperceptibly small. And the hard parts, when people are always saying to you like, oh, but it's a growth opportunity, and you're like in it and you want to punch those people in the throat. And when you look back, you're like, oh, sure, it was a growth opportunity, but that wasn't what I needed in that moment. Right. So, but it doesn't mean it isn't a growth opportunity. It's just not the pretty part. It's the hard part. And that's still growth, but you don't have to appreciate it as growth in that moment because it's part of the cycle. It's part of the ongoing process of it, as opposed to the moment that you can say, oh, I got the certificate for the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really lovely description of the difference between growing horizontally and growing vertically. Like I can go to a class to learn a thing, right? Or I can job shadow, whatever. Like the horizontal piece is a little bit more straightforward, and we could probably say that it has like an end date, where we could call it complete. Like, okay, you've got the thing, you know how to ride the bike. And vertical development is both a little bit. You can't really stop your own development. You can resist it, but you're not going to stop it. It's a little bit more uncontrollable, and it's a little bit less finite. A little less finite. That's wonderful.
And I think there's moments of bloom that I think it's important that there's like moments of blooming in there that are really like the aha moments. And there's moments of like that are more winter in your plant life. It doesn't mean you're not growing. It just doesn't look the same.
Right. And so the way that I would translate that to vertical development is that we can be kind of, we're going to get into the stages here in just a minute, but we can kind of be consolidated and a little bit status quo with where we are in our development. Like there's not a lot going on. We're pretty comfortable where we are. It's working really well for the context we're in. And then things can start to happen where we feel some discomfort, we feel some tension. Probably we're on the edge of maybe a transition to the next stage, and that can feel not great to be in transition between stages. But yeah, there are absolutely, like, we come to these plateaus, we rest for a while, then we get back on the mountain and we keep climbing. Absolutely kind of works really well with your summer and winter kind of analogy there. Good. Let's hear from one other person, and then we'll keep cranking. Or maybe Lindsay and Paul or Paula.
I don't have anything quite as profound to offer, but it was interesting. I think when we change when we look at the things that change the perspective on how we think, a lot of times we feel like, I think it's easy for people to feel like they're in a very unique situation. And of course, everybody's situation is unique, but I think like finding the commonalities among how people have changed in their vertical thinking or their horizontal thinking, and then appreciating that sort of as you adjust your own like models is really important, because even in our little breakout session, people had very different life experiences than me, but there was very relatable vertical changes, just sort of with different context.
Yeah, so that's the big thing here that you've already got it, Paul. So I just want to emphasize it, is that this story of development that I'm about to tell you is universal. It is going to manifest in different ways for every person who experiences it, but the basic steps, the basic stages that I'm going to describe to you are the same. They're the same for everybody. And so from a coaching perspective, if you can begin to lightly diagnose where you are, where your client is, then you can use the model to tailor your coaching to them. And that is one of the things that I love so much about this work is that it really is a roadmap for development that I don't think exists nearly as cleanly or as universally on the horizontal side of things, if you will. So thank you. I actually think that was very profound, Paul. So thank you. Lindsay, you want to weigh in and then we'll move on?
Yeah, I did. We had talked, Jessica brought up that vertical development tends to follow crises. And that aligns with that idea of something you cannot avoid. If it is horizontal development, I am choosing or I am being tasked, you need to go learn how to do something because you need to do a concrete task. But when we come up against crises, the crisis isn't going to change. We've reached a blockade of some sort, and it's not until we change that we can address it. Over.
Yes, absolutely. You got it. Yeah. And that speaks a little bit to the inevitability of vertical development, right? That if it's going to happen, there's not much you can do to stop it. And it is often accompanied by these really difficult life events and some really wonderful life events like having children or getting married or moving to another country or whatever. There's a lot of different things that are positive that invoke this too. Terrific. I think you got a really good handle on what these things are. Again, back to what I said at the beginning, you already know what this is. I'm just giving you some language to name it. So let's go ahead and move forward. So this is a bit of an eye chart. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but this may be a slide that you want to print out when Melissa shares the deck with you. I love this because it's a nice reference tool. I am going to walk through all of these stages relatively quickly. I'm going to try and spend less time on the stages that are less common and more time on the stages that are more common. But this gives you an overall view that we start in early adulthood at self-protecting here at the top. And then the later stages are down here at the bottom, transforming and being. So we're going to dive in here and we're going to start with self-protecting. We are not going to spend a lot of time on this one because very few adults have their center of gravity at self-protecting. But at this stage, I love these little images, so I pause here for a second, but then here's the meaty slide with the stuff to look at and read while I'm talking. At self-protecting, my main motivation is to get my needs and wants met. It's really all about me. It's about what I'm interested in, and I'm pretty self-centered. So some of the things that are really great about people who have, and so think about young adults, think about teenagers. I have 2 teenagers at home right now, and I love them dearly, and they're pretty self-interested. Who are they thinking about? They're thinking about themselves. And so one of the things that is constantly happening in my parenting is inviting them to think about how other people think about things or how what they want to do or what they choose to do impacts other people, right? So beginning to think about other people is their development opportunity. Regardless, there are some really wonderful strengths here at this stage of self-protecting. Can assume control, can assume power. And when there is an emergency situation, that can be really important. It can be really helpful to have somebody stand up and kind of take charge, if you will. The weaknesses here are a very kind of short-term thinking about getting your needs met. There's not a lot of pausing in between feeling an emotion and acting it out. So there's not a lot of emotional self-control or emotional intelligence happening at this stage. Other people can be tools for people at this stage to get what they want, right? So I don't view you as a human being. I view you as a means to the end, my end, by the way. So again, not a lot of people have their center of gravity at this stage, but we've all grown through this. So this inside all of us. So one of my favorite examples, this is a blatant steal from one of my teachers at Georgetown, but it applies to me as well, is when does this show up for me? So I get on a plane with some regularity, and like many business travelers, I am carrying my little suitcase and I don't want to check it because that's annoying. But I want overhead space on the plane, right? So what do I do to make sure that my needs get met? I get on with my boarding group. I'm standing there kind of close to the gate. I'm one of those gate lice people. And I'm getting on, and my elbows aren't literally out, but my elbows are out. I know that I need overhead space for my bag. I don't want my bag to end up really behind where I'm sitting. Like this is something I care about when I fly. So I get on, and as soon as I get my bag up in the overhead, ideally right over my seat so that it's easy to get when we're deplaning, then I can help you with your bag. Then I can ask you how your day is going. Then I can think about other people. But do I have it inside of me to take care of myself and my needs? You bet I do. You bet I do. And so for all of us, that manifests in little ways in our lives. That's just one of the ways that manifests for me. From a leadership perspective, this is not, it can be great, as we say here, in sales situations and in emergencies. Sales, because it's winning, I want to win. So people at this stage can be really good in sales, and in emergencies where somebody needs to step up and take charge. But in general, this is not a great leadership stance, because if I'm only interested in myself and I can't really think about other people, obviously other people are going to be able to tell that I'm not thinking about them. Therefore, I'm not going to be a really great candidate to be followed as a leader, right? So in general, we're not seeing a lot of this in the workplace. We're not seeing a lot of this in most adults, but it is sort of the beginning stage of vertical or adult development. What happens next is that each of the stages kind of alternates between sort of being oriented towards the individual or oriented towards the group. So when we start with opportunists, we are starting kind of with the individual. So then the next stage here, as we go into conforming, is really about the group. So I realize that I'm kind of out on my own. I maybe want to feel more belonging or more connectedness, and my worldview grows into conforming. This is where I really identify with a group of some sort. What kind of group? It could be anything. This could be your family of origin. This could be the military, right? There's really strong group identity around the different branches of the military. This could be religious groups if your faith is a really important part, organized religion. I think that this stage explains why we love college and professional sports in the United States and around the world so much. It really speaks to a deep need inside of us to belong to something bigger than we are. So what are the strengths of this stage? When I'm a member of the group, I really am going to line up with what the group believes, what the group stands for, what the group leader says is important. So obedience, loyalty. I will make tremendous sacrifices on behalf of the group, right? We see that day in and day out in our armed forces. So I think that's a really great example here. I will accept my position in the hierarchy without a lot of complaining. And I really care about preserving stability and order. So I'm not much of a change agent. So I'm pretty cognizant of where I fit in the group. I want to keep things smooth and stable. I want to preserve my status or my position in the group. So the weaknesses come in and that I'm not really great with change, because that might threaten my position in the group. So difference, you normally where the group identity is, there's some kind of homogeneity going on. We all root for the same team, or we all go to the same church, or we all believe the same thing. And so if you're different from me, or you're different from the belief system of the group, I can be intolerant of you, or I can be worried or scared of you. Feedback is often threatening at this stage because it's going to threaten my position in the group, right? I don't actually individually want to change or get better or be called out for anything, because that might threaten my position. And this last bullet here under weaknesses around losing face is a really big part of this stage. So again, we start to get into the numbers here. Only about 10% of the adult population has a center of gravity at conforming. It is not a large percentage of the adult population, obviously, but we do see some of this sometimes. So I'm going to keep going. Melissa, are there any questions or comments in the chat at this point that are worth pausing a moment for?
Let me take a quick look here. Thank you for this. Loving this presentation. Oh, they have to run. Let's see. I think we're good.
Okay. Heidi, I saw you raise your hand. You want to ask a question?
I do. I'm very curious to know, you said only about 10% of the adult population is in this conforming stage. However, based on social media and news and things to that nature, you know where I'm going, Jessica.
Yeah.
It's like, is this number increasing? Because it seems to me that people are being more conformative versus speaking out and saying, hey, you know what? Let's find some common ground here. Over.
Yeah. Uh, uh, Absolutely, you are noticing that. The way that I would attempt to put that in context is that a society at large right now is in a little bit of a regression. That's probably the main argument that the vertical development folks are making about what's happening in the world right now. That it's a little bit like one step forward, two steps back, or two steps forward, one step back, that we are in a little bit of a regression right now. So I think that that is partially to explain why it feels like there's more conforming behavior going on out there. And I would probably agree, anecdotally, at least with your assessment. I'm not aware of any research on that, so I can't state that with specificity, but I would agree with your story. I agree
Or
with your
the
story.
Perception, right?
Yeah, the
Thank you.
perception. I agree with the perception for sure. This next stage is specializing. This is my favorite picture in the whole deck. I love this little baby with the little nerdy glasses on and his bow tie. Specializing is the most populous stage that we know about right now. So we, depending on the numbers, about 40% of the adult population has their center of gravity at this stage. So we'll spend a minute here and go a little bit deeper. So at conforming, I was part of the group. I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to be called out. My identity I didn't really have a lot of my own opinions. I really adopted the opinions of the group. But then as I start to grow, I want to swing back to more of an individual focus in my development. I want to stand out. I want to be recognized. And the motivation here, as you can see on the slide, is to be knowledgeable. This is an incredibly powerful stage from a leadership perspective and from a workplace perspective, because we need people who know their stuff, right? There's a tremendous amount of subject matter expertise that is required in all kinds of contexts for the work to get done. And people who are at specializing are exceptionally well positioned to do that. So people at this stage really go deep in what they know. They are very strong individual contributors. They are good problem solvers. They have very high standards for what good looks like. Very rational, very data driven. The expert, I'm doing a little bit of it today, right? The experts say this, the research says that. This is a little bit of like, I'm kind of in this stage today for you of sharing information and kind of being the expert on this thing today in this context, right? Some of the disadvantages here are that if I know the most, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm not really going to engage you. I'm not going to want to delegate to you. I'm not going to really trust your contributions as much. So there can be a reluctance to delegate. There can be a micromanagement tendency that comes out here. I also can think of other people's perspectives as being competing. So I had my center of gravity in this stage. I was still in corporate America. I was working at Lowe's Home Improvement, and I was the director of change execution. So I had just learned all this great horizontal stuff around change management. I was super expert in it, and I loved it. But I was kind of wielding it like a hammer in the organization, and I was clobbering other people with it. I was not able to collaborate as well with other people, other departments, to move them forward from a change management perspective. Instead, I was just like, you're doing it wrong. If you were going to do it right, it would look like this. So you can kind of see the difference in how somebody at this stage holds their knowledge or holds their expertise compared to what we're going to see as we continue to grow. Let me move forward here because I have another slide. So you may or may not be familiar with polarities. Polarities are pairs of interdependent ideas that can be really helpful from a coaching context. So if you're working with somebody that you suspect might have their center of gravity at specializing, these are some of the dynamics that are probably at play for them. They probably have more of a focus on the left-hand side terms, perfection, all the way down to independence. And the development opportunity is going to be on the right-hand side. So if I'm in specializing, I care a lot about perfection, technical competence, knowing the answer, there being one right way to do things, a lot of pride in my work and in my knowledge, and independent, I can do it by myself. On the other hand, the opportunity is to practice being good enough, to bring in some humanity, all the way down to humility and collaboration, right? Questions, comments on specializing here before we move on? This is a big one that is very prevalent in the workplace. If you think about yourself or you think about people around you, it should be really easy to identify this stage of development. Okay.
So Jessica, there's a question, if you don't mind, in the chat.
Yeah.
So is there an option to consider the phases that would translate to showing up as our center of gravity versus showing up in certain contexts of our lives?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you read it again?
Sure. And then Karina, if you, yeah, there you go, Karina, go ahead.
Thanks, Karina. Weigh in. Yeah, what are you trying to ask?
Yeah, no, well, one, I really appreciate this conversation. But two, I'm wondering, because, and this was, I think, brought on by the thought of like, well, COVID brought out like, you know, some of these aspects. And what I'm hearing is almost like this linear progression a little bit, or kind of like
Yes.
a fate, like, and like a center of gravity. And I'm curious if, you know, this theory that's being explained is the predominance around the idea that we have a center of gravity in these, or is there, or can we think about it in a way of like, these will actually show up differently in different contexts?
Yes. I got you. I got you now. I got you.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, I totally understand what you're asking now. Thank you for that. Yeah, so this is kind of one of the debates in the field between states and stages. And so some people believe that you kind of are at your center of gravity most of the time, and other people believe that you flit around. So for example, one of the ways I already talked a little bit about how I regress to opportunist when I'm getting on a plane and I really just want to like put my bag in the overhead space. But we absolutely show up as different, you know, different stages in different places, right? So I'm a CEO of my business. When I'm with my team and we need to make some decisions, I want to hear from everybody, but I know at a certain point that I'm gonna make a decision. I'm gonna step into that leadership role. I'm gonna try and make the best decision that I can for all of us in the business. And then there's other times where you know, I'm going to show up in a different way. One of the places that we tend to regress a lot, raise your hand if this resonates with you, is with our family of origin. We get around our mothers, we get around our fathers, we get around our aunts and uncles, our siblings, our cousins, all of these people, and it's like we turn into some earlier version of ourselves. I know that my mother does this to me. I love her dearly, and it's like I'm 16 years old again whenever I get around my mom. So this is, yeah, I see a lot of hearts and things coming up. So that's, Karina, that's a really great question. And I think that I probably lean more into the states versus stages part of it. But from a coaching and a developmental point of view, the stage part is a little bit more helpful. Like we kind of have to say like what's going on here most of the time so that we can work with it, if that's helpful. So great question. I've got some videos in here that unfortunately I don't think we're going to have time to look at them. I'm looking at so I'm going to skim through these. I'm going to skip the video and go to the next stage, but maybe I'll share those with Melissa so that you can take a look at them. So the next stage is performing, and kind of the developmental story that happens is I'm in specializing. I'm really good at whatever it is that I'm doing. I feel like I'm super smart. I know what the right answer is. I have a clear idea of what best practice looks like. But I realize at some juncture that I'm actually not having as much of an impact as I could. And so this is what happened to me when I was at Lowe's. I sat down with the chief strategy officer. Of course, I really thought I deserved a promotion. I really wanted a promotion. And so I'm going around kind of campaigning for myself and trying to get feedback. So I sit down with the chief strategy officer and I'm like, So like I'm like, the change person at Lowe's. This is so great and I'm doing such a good job. And like, don't you think I should get a promotion? Something like that. And he says, yeah, he's like, you're so smart. You know so much about change. And like, we definitely need you to be playing the role that you're playing. However, he wasn't quite this explicit, but he's pretty darn close. The trail of dead bodies behind you is extensive. You really have to figure out how to work with people better, Jessica. Oh, that was the most difficult feedback conversation I have ever had in my whole life. I walked out of there with my tail between my legs. I'm sure there was lots of crying afterwards. But what I did, this was sort of the big impetus for me to shift from specializing to performing, is that I started to really look at how I was showing up. And it could not be denied that even though I knew all of this great stuff and I had ideas about how to do it, I wasn't really having as much of an impact as I could because I wasn't partnering with people as well as I could. Hence, we get into performing. This is the second most populous stage in our model here, with about 35% of the adult population. So between specializing and performing, we're at like 75% of the adult population. So most of us are sitting right in these two stages. The big shift from specializing to performing is going from knowing or being knowledgeable to being effective, to getting things done. So this stage is most consistently identified with what we think of as successful in the Western business world. Somebody who works really hard, who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps, who gets a lot of things done, and they never stop working, right? We all know these people. Maybe we are these people. Maybe we were these people. Again, you should be able to reflect on yourself or look around and see this everywhere, right? This is also what the media and popular culture and the story of America is about this stage, right? So what are some of the great things about this? We really value this stage in organizations as well, right? So we can see a bigger picture here. We're growing the sandbox or the playing field that we can see. Our maturity, our ability to deal with complexity is growing, so that the playing field is getting quite a bit larger here. This is where managerial work and teamwork kind of come online. Really good at getting things done, very hardworking. What is the big risk here? Burnout. Burnout and an over-identification with responsibility. So often when I'm coaching people who are at this stage, I had one last week that was so crystal clear to me. A whole variety of things that happened to this poor guy that were out of his control. And he was telling me how his performance was terrible and he was going to lose equity in his firm because of it. And I was like, time out. Like, let's call a time out. I said, you can't control these things. Why would you be punished for them? Like, surely your coworkers, your equity partners understand that some of this is out of your control. And he was like, well, yeah. I said, so we dug into like how much responsibility was he taking, and really the idea that he was taking too much responsibility for what was going on around him that he could not control. So that is one of the big coaching opportunities here at performing. I saw a hand go up. Who's got a question?
Yeah, I had a question. So when you receive feedback that you're not being effective and you're not collaborating, and you determine that you have to change your approach, do you acknowledge when you go back to work with these people that you have, that you have to rebuild relationships with? Do you acknowledge that you're shifting and that you're going to do better? Do you come at it like that or no?
I think you can. I don't know that I was super conscious of the changes I don't know that maybe I wasn't a coach then yet. So my self-awareness probably was not what it is today. So I think if you're a coach and you're relatively self-aware, which I'm assuming we all have an extra dose of self-awareness here because of our interest in coaching, then yeah, you might be able to narrate that for people. You might be able to say, hey, I'm really trying to do this thing. I'm really trying to show up in this different way. And you may notice that some things are different. But just like in coaching, our clients don't always tell everybody around them what they're working on, right? They just do it. And sometimes they get credit for that from their stakeholders, right? Other people see it. And sometimes it's more explicit. So I think in that situation for me, I didn't really talk about it to people. I just tried to be more accommodating. I tried to meet people in the middle. I tried to look for good enough. I tried to really expand my impact, which meant lessening my ego and lessening my like sense of rightness and my sense of purity around how to practice change management, right? I don't think I ever said anything to anybody about it, except about 6 months later, I'll finish the story. I went back to the chief strategy officer again, more absolutely just petrified, but compelled to have this conversation. I went back in and is it better? Like, has it gotten better? And he looked at me and he said, he goes, Jessica, after what I did to you in the last feedback conversation, he's like, I'm not sure I would ever see you in my office again. I didn't report up through him. So we did not have, like, he wasn't obligated to give me feedback. I wasn't obligated to ask for it. He was just a really important person in the change domain. And he said, it is getting better. He goes, you've made a lot of shifts that are really paying off. He said, so I see you, I see what you're doing, and keep going. Keep going. You're doing it. So that was that was like the best validation I ever could have asked for. But I don't know that anybody else would have really been like, oh, she's making some really big changes. So is that helpful?
I mean, I just, I get a sense sometimes from people where they have, broken relationships with some people in the organization and they're not willing to give them a second chance. So I was just thinking
Yeah.
that it may be helpful to explain, hey, I see what I've done and I'm trying to do better, just try to bridge that gap.
I think that could be a really powerful repair move, right? I love the idea of it. Yeah. Was there one other hand that went up? No? Okay.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think like where the intersection is between the two columns, like for me, I found and even in counseling, it was like give yourself and others grace should go right there.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I love that. There's grace associated with all of this, right? Like part of growing vertically is understanding that everybody comes to the table with a different perspective and they're all valid. They are all legitimate. Nothing is right or wrong about any of these. None of these stages or states are better or worse than another. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. The key question that I would offer you is like, how do I use this or how do I assess what work needs to be done around this is the thing that we care about is not just growing for growth's sake. We don't just want everybody to be at the latest stage possible. The key question is what is the fit between what I am being asked to do at work and in life and where I am developmentally? Is it a good enough fit? Is the gap pretty big where I'm going to have trouble meeting the expectations? Do I need to grow to kind of meet those expectations? Is my context maybe too simple for where I am now and I need to be in a more complex context because I've got capacity for it? The fit question is that's the big thing here. That's the big thing here. So I want to keep going. I love all this dialogue and we've only got about 15 minutes left. So these are the polarities at performing. Again, we are going to, at this particular stage, we're going to have a preference for the things on the left-hand side, and we are going to see the ones on the right-hand side as development opportunities. So from a coaching perspective, if you lightly diagnose that somebody is at performing, they're working really hard, they're leading, they're getting a lot of stuff done, but they're burned out. Their to-do list is never going to end. They're feeling really overwhelmed. This is a very common coaching profile. I know we've all seen it. Then this slide, these polarities may be really helpful for you and for that client. We're going to skip the video, even though they're great. The next stage is internalizing. And I love this picture because this picture of lighting up the match and kind of setting them all on fire is really indicative of what happens at internalizing. The transition from performing to internalizing is probably the most significant developmental transition that we know about right now. And the reason for that is that not only is it a stage transition from performing to internalizing, it is also a transition from the stages from conforming specializing in performing, or what we call the conventional stages, to internalizing to the next few stages, or what we call the post-conventional stages. And what that means is that at the conventional stages, our thinking capacity is really outside in. What do I mean when I say that? Outside in means that I really am accepting and expecting, I'm expecting kind of to be told what's important, what success looks like, what I should be doing, are all coming from the outside, coming from my family of origin, coming from my bosses, my peers, the media, popular culture, my teachers, my friends, everybody, right? We're kind of absorbing all of these messages. And at the conventional stages, we largely accept them for what they are. We don't question them so much. And then we try to do what we believe is expected of us, okay? Outside in thinking. Once we come to performing, the edges of performing, and we're feeling burned out and really questioning if it's always going to be this way, our thinking begins to shift to inside out. So imagine that you have, or your client has, a board table with all of their important stakeholders around that board table. At the conventional stages, the client is on the side of the table. They want to hear from everybody around the table, and they're hoping that there are not any contradictions or conflicts between what all of those stakeholders are telling them, because we're not really capable at those stages of navigating those contradictions and those conflicts. As people grow to internalizing and our numbers start to drop off here, only about 20% of the adult population makes the transition to internalizing. Okay, so we've kind of crested our bell curve here and we're going to come down the other side. That person stands up from their spot on the side of the table and they go to the head. All of those stakeholders are still there. They're all still there. Let me move the slide forward so you can be reading this while I talk. But now that person, that client, is better able to, and they still want to hear from everybody who's at the table, right? Doesn't go away that we don't want to hear from people. In fact, at this stage, it goes up. We want to hear from more people. We value those perspectives more. But now what there is there's some space between what all of those stakeholders say and what we actually choose to do or choose to believe. So I'm able to make object, I'm able to put those perspectives, those expectations in my hand, look at them and go, do I agree? Do I not agree? What do I think? And that shift from outside in to inside out thinking is huge. It is quite significant. It is a lot of hard work. It is fraught with difficulty. It does not often feel very good. And so that's why it is probably the most difficult transition that we know about. So what happens at internalizing? We really want to be flexible. We are interested in the idea that there are many ways to think about something. There are many truths. I really am questioning if I've been playing life by kind of the rules that were given to me at the earlier stages. What I'm really doing here is I'm challenging all of those assumptions. I'm questioning all of those assumptions. I look at the game and I'm like, why do we play the game that way? Why are the rules the way they are? Shouldn't we change these things? We get much more interested in feedback and criticism because it helps us learn about ourselves and it tells us what other people's perspectives are. And we really, really can learn from our mistakes. A lot of the defensiveness, a lot of the, the issues that we have around feedback start to fall away at this stage. We're not so scared of feedback anymore. Okay. There can be a lot of tension in workplaces between people who come to this stage and people at earlier stages, because people at earlier stages are like, we got to do the thing. There's a right way. These are the rules of the game. And this person is like, time out, slow down. Let's do it differently. Let's unpack all of this and repack it. And so there can be sometimes some conflict and some frustration between people at this stage and people at especially performing, right? Or performing right before this. There's Oprah. Oprah's really good post-conventional thinker. We're going to skip her for now. Let me pause here. Any questions on internalizing? We've only got about 10 minutes left, so I'm trying to go as fast as I can. Anything in the chat, Melissa?
Jen did mention that I think the internalizing, she said, a coaching mindset, right?
Absolutely. And yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Marisa said, being okay with not everyone liking us. You be kind always, but you have to realize that others' opinions do not define who you are.
Yes, and that's really hard. Intellectually, that's like easy to understand, right? We talk about them. This is one of my bones that I pick with Mel Robbins and her let them theory. Like, let people think what they want. Let people say what they're going to say. Well, that's really great, but most of us care a lot about what other people think, right? So the idea of intellectually understanding, not caring what other people think, and actually embodying that and living that way, those are two different things. Two different things. Yeah, great comments. Great comments. All right, then we come to the next stage, strategizing. This is a really fun, interesting stage. Again, I love the visual here because it kind of gives you an idea of what this is all about. If our ability to see and navigate complexity grows, our maturity grows with each stage. At strategizing, we are pretty far along in our development at this point, and the playing field, the complexity that we can see, is now getting quite large, as evidenced by this image here. Only about 5% of the adult population gets to this stage, and this is where our leadership development imperative comes in. This is the stage, this is me totally experting on you, totally specializing on you. The research says that this is the stage that is most closely correlated with the ability to achieve and sustain transformational change. That's a really high bar. I'm going to say it again. Achieve and sustain transformational change. Not everybody needs to do that. Not everybody wants to do that. But if that is a leadership aspiration for you or for one of your clients, this is the stage that is most highly correlated with being able to do that. So the goal here, the motivation for these folks is to be integrated. They really want to bring everything together. People at this stage are highly collaborative. They're very tolerant of other perspectives. Ego is really starting to decline. So there's not a lot of ego or status importance placed on that for people at this stage. They're very proactively seeking out feedback. And really living, when we talk about being integrated, this is really about being aligned and integrated with your values, your principles, as well as maybe some universal principles that you see up there: dignity, tolerance, justice, things like that. Does somebody have a question?
No, that was me. I apologize. I thought I was on mute.
Oh, okay, you're fine.
I was clearing my throat.
Yeah, is that when you can see more, when you can see that bigger playing field, you need more time to process it. And so as we get to these later stages, the time that people need for space and reflection really goes up, And the perception can be that productivity goes down, but what they're doing is they're really incorporating more than what than the rest of us can see. Might come across as arrogant. So as we get to these later stages, people are often thinking a lot differently than people at earlier stages. So there can be kind of this sense that these people are weird or different or arrogant. And it can be, it starts to get a little weird out here. Is kind of the point here. But this is a pretty powerful stage from a leadership perspective. Okay. And then as we kind of come into the end, I've combined the last two stages here, transforming and being. In general, we would say that less than 1%, a very small number of adults ever reach these very late stages of development. This is kind of the latest stage or stages that we think we know about now. So just know there's a researcher out in Seattle. Her name is, I think she's in Seattle, Terry O'Fallon. Some of you may be familiar with her, and she really believes that she's discovered a stage beyond these. So just know that we're not sure that we really know what the end of human development looks like yet, but this is kind of what we call it right now. People who are out here at transforming and being, I won't spend a lot of time here because it gets hard to make any general statements because these folks are all really different from each other. But the idea here is that they can see in their sense of time really extends. The sense of past, present, and long into the future. They're really kind of generational thinkers, and they also can think on the scale of societal change. So some of the people that we might put out here be Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa are some of the people that probably have a thinking capacity that is out here. We often think that the people that are like this are super fascinating and interesting and also just really weird. It can feel real. People who are at these later stages can really look at the world in quite a different way than the rest of us. And so for those small number of people who do spend time in this stage, they can feel pretty lonely, pretty unanchored. And the one thing that I didn't say that kind of I want to make sure that you hear before we kind of wrap up this part and do our last slide is that one of the things that also happens as we go from performing to internalizing and growing past that is that other forms of knowing start to come online. So it's conforming, specializing, performing. We really preference intellectual knowledge, mental capacity. But as we move into internalizing and later spiritual knowing, intuition, emotional knowledge, the way we experience things in our bodies, these other sources of information, these other ways of knowing things start to come online and really kind of come up to meet the intellectual or meet the rational scientific as a complement to those things. So there's our model again. Let me look at, we've got just a couple of minutes left. The last thing that I want to offer you is this last slide here. If this is all really interesting to you and you want to dig in more, this content here on this slide comes from a book called Upgrade by, I think it's Richard Boston and Karen Ellis. This is a really quick headline. But what I love about their book and what these 4 things are ways to grow vertically that transcend the stages. So these 4 strategies, seeing and navigating complexity, taking multiple perspectives, self-reflecting and adjusting your own thinking and behavior, and holding opposing ideas simultaneously are the major thinking capacities that cut across all of the stages. And at each stage, they are going to manifest in a slightly different way. So as a coach working with clients, if you decide to start to coach vertically or from a developmental perspective, these are 4 of the things that you may really want to focus on with your clients. And so the book Upgrade not only gives a really nice description of what these are, but then it has a boatload of exercises and activities that you can use with your clients to really help them develop these capacities. So that's the last thing I want to offer you. I'm happy to take a few more questions. I'm sure people have to peel off. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Please download our white paper here. That is our initial white paper on vertical development. I invite you to download that to read more. And yeah, I've been delighted to be here and I'm happy to take a few questions in the time that we've got left. What have we got? Anybody? Try and make the...
You've got lots of hearts and lots of thank yous, Jessica.
Okay.
And some were asking about the book. Patricia says she can't find it on Amazon. Is there another location that she can find it?
It should be on Amazon. It's a little bit weird to find. I don't know why it doesn't come up in the search. Try searching by Richard Boston and Karen Ellis instead of by Upgrade. I can also send Melissa the link to share out. The other book I would really recommend that I love is called Leadership Agility by Joyner and Joseph. Yeah. Are those hands
And
raised with questions there?
Angela has her hand up. Angela?
Okay.
Oh, wait, someone else does too. But go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, my question, I'm going back to your conversation with your supervisor that was impactful because I feel that that's gonna come up for one of my employees. So it really had to do with you wanting to make that change, right?
It did.
Yeah.
But I
And
would.
so
But
how long was it a process?
I had to be disrupted. I had to see that there was a change to be made.
Yeah.
Because I went in there thinking I deserved a promotion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I think the gift that he offered me was giving me an honest assessment of where I was falling short and how my worldview at specializing was not a good fit for what I was being asked to do in the organization. And once I could clearly see the gap that he saw, then I could decide what I wanted to do about it, if anything. And then of course, I opted in to that work. But yeah.
Okay,
so I think that the disruption can be really helpful is maybe the key component I would comment on. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything else? I don't know. I can't even see who's left if people are leaving.
It looks like Karina might have her hand up still.
Okay. I keep trying to get all the faces up. Karina.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate, Jessica, you just staying on a couple more minutes longer. Great presentation. I'm curious, you're talking about how disruption can facilitate the development. What would you say are the biggest barriers to progressing in vertical development and sustaining the phase of that?
Yeah, there's some really nice work by Nick, a researcher named Nick Petrie, who used to be with the Center for Creative Leadership. And when he was at CCL, one of the pieces he published was about how vertical development happens. And what he really described was the kind of three components that need to be in there. And so if one of them is missing or not sufficient, then that would probably be a barrier. But one of them is, he calls them heat experiences. Getting it over your head, being in a context that is more advanced than you are, so that the way that you look at the world is insufficient, and that you're forced to kind of unmake and remake your worldview to make sense of the more complex context that you're in. So that heat experiences. Then you really need to be able to talk to somebody who is at a later stage than you are, so that you can kind of get exposed to what that more improved, more expansive worldview would look like. And then there needs to be an integration of those things to bring the worldview forward, if you will. So heat experiences like a mentor or a guide of some sort, and then an integration kind of experience or period of time. So if one of those is missing, it can be hard. Yeah.
Super helpful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Jessica, for this. This has been amazing. You've got all these wonderful resources, and everybody's clamoring for your slides and videos, and I'm sure they're going to read your white paper as well. So I just sent an announcement that I will be sending out the link shortly.
Okay.
And that,
awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. This has been amazing. Been very enlightening. Yeah.
Good. It's my pleasure. I'm so glad to be with all of you. And again, thank you for everything you're doing. I just am in awe of your contributions to everything that we stand for. So thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
You. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For some reason, I can't type into the chat, so I just wanted to come off.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.